So I'm here with Noah Gartner, and let's start talking
Do
about
the things.
stuff. The first thing that I had written down was dual monitors versus mono monitors. What are your feelings on that? Because I have some feelings on this.
You have some feelings?
I have feelings on
Okay.
Using dual monitors.
My chiropractor also has feelings on this. And I've done like all of it. I've had two big monitors, and I've had my laptop as a monitor with one other big monitor up, and I've had three monitors. I think I've gone to now just like one big monitor. And I could just switch screens when I need to. And I find that works pretty well for me. So I have like one monitor, and as long as I know, like I have, and this just may be my personality, but I have like for every screen that I have set up, I know what is there. So I have my IDEs on the first screen, and I have the Sprout app for testing on the second screen with the DevTools open, and on the third screen I have Jira and Confluence and anything I need to like research and read.
Right.
And then the fourth screen I have my Slack and my email.
Right. So you have the different like desktops.
The desktops for my Mac, yeah. I just switch through all of them.
And you just use one monitor.
I
you
just
don't
use
use like
one
laptop
monitor.
and monitor?
Correct.
Okay.
Because it gives me headaches. If I turn my head to read from my left or my right, the one way it sort of works is if I have my email to my right, and I have like the bar on the left with all the emails, and then the actual email itself to the right. If I situate it, I don't have to turn my head so much.
Right.
But I still have to, and if I do that too much, if I'm on like the secondary monitor for too long,
right,
I'll get a headache, and I can't.
My feelings on it are like the theoretical feelings I have on it are like, more monitors means I can have more stuff up.
Yeah.
And be able to just like look at all of it whenever I want. But having all those things up also allows me to not be able to focus on one thing.
Yep.
So I've started to rethink whether or not I want more than one monitor, because like when I'm at home, I'm just typically using just the laptop screen, and I feel like I can focus more because I typically only have one like window up at a time, instead of like doing a side by side or anything like that. So I'll just have one window so that I'm only focused on one.
Yeah.
And then as long as you're kind of outward looking in at what you're doing, you can then also notice like, oh, well, I spend a lot of time switching over to this thing. Like, why am I doing that? So yeah, I'm probably going to switch to just using one monitor.
Even here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm probably gonna do kind of the same setup as you, and just use the big monitor, and probably just have two windows up.
Yeah. What do you keep on? So you have your main monitor.
Yeah.
And then you have your laptop.
Yep.
Like I see when I come over, you have.
I'll typically either have like Slack or Jira or I guess I've changed it a little bit recently, but I would normally have like Slack up on my laptop, and then the stuff I'm working with on my big one, which would be like Jira and email and whatever in like one window, but then on the other side I would have, I position it to where like I'm more comfortable with looking, like with Jira and like email, I'm not typically needing to like focus in on that.
Yep.
It's more of just like a glance, and then I'm back to like the thing right in front of me.
Yeah.
Because of the way I have it set up, it's like shifted over to the side.
Yeah.
So like the stuff furthest away from me is the stuff that I'm not looking at as frequently as like the things right in front of me, where it's like the browser that I'm testing in, or the or like if I'm working in IntelliJ, I'll have that in the middle, or I'll have like two windows up of like the source tree in the bottom, and then IntelliJ at the top, and then on the left side will be my Jira and email.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm probably gonna switch.
I wonder if, I don't know if there's any like research you can do, but it'd be interesting to see like if you have Slack up and email up just in case. Like how often do you look over there to see? And is it actually a distraction, or is it just, unless it completely pulls your focus, is it still a distraction?
I would say it is relatively a distraction.
Yeah.
But I think that also partially speaks to maybe the culture of the office, because we don't just use Slack for like work stuff.
Yes.
We also have, more personalized channels that allow us to grow as a team, or inter-team relationships and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it for me, it's definitely it can definitely be a distraction. But I mean, I don't think it's ever really gotten to the point where I'm like very concerned with the amount of time that I may be on it. It's typically like a minute or two here and there throughout the day. But yeah, having it up definitely doesn't help.
Yes.
So I try to minimize it if I can. But then there's also like, I guess something else that kind of plays a role in it is like, not so much the idea of like the fear of missing out, but it's more of like not 100% confident that the settings I've set up for Slack are going to notify me when something happens.
Oh, something actually important.
Yeah, so like a lot of the time I'll have like our like deploy channel up just in case, because there have been times where I didn't get a notification.
Right.
So there is a seed of doubt of like I may not see like something, and then I look back and it's like, oh, there was a failure sitting around for 20 minutes where nobody looked at it because nobody realized.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely need it minimized for like when I want to like focus on very specific task.
Get stuff done. Yeah, but you may miss out on all of those random conversations that happen.
Yeah.
And how will you know if they I mean, it could, in 20 minutes, you could have a really nice thread going on.
Well, yeah.
That you just
Some
miss.
of those threads grow pretty quick.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I have my preferences are kind of I mean, maybe they're not all that robust, but I definitely have like a lot of variations of the same word to make sure that I don't miss out on like, so I have like my name, my full name, my last name, the name of the tribe I'm on, the name of the squad I'm on, the name, the word deploy, the I think I have a couple others too. So like I have all of those set up so that like I can, especially since like I deploy once a week, if somebody in like the deployers channel says, hey, can somebody cover my deploy on whatever day, I can just jump in and immediately like claim it.
I got it.
Because I have deploy. But having deploy also gives me notifications from like many other channels.
Oh, yes.
So But for the most part, it's not that bad.
Okay.
I've started muting unimportant channels.
Yeah, I wonder, is that more of a distraction than having Slack open?
The notifications?
Yeah. Maybe.
Probably.
I don't know.
No, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Probably.
I have none set up.
Oh, you don't?
I check now and again. If someone wants me, they can add me, and I'll have a look. It just means I miss a whole bunch of the random threads.
Well, unless
stuff,
you get like
but
at mentioned, then
right.
you're gonna get
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if that happens, then
and at
someone
that
actually
point,
needs me.
Yeah, there's a reason that you're being mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been here for 2 years, and I still, when I get back from vacation, it blows my mind that I only have like 20 emails.
Oh.
10,000 Slack messages to go through, and a lot of them I could just ignore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, email isn't really used all that much
No,
here.
not at all.
I mean, I know I don't really look at it because most of the conversations are happening in Slack, or somebody will post a Slack message that says, I just sent out an email. So, which is kind of funny. I'm rarely looking at my email because it happens so infrequently that I'm like, I don't need this open all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah. I'm thinking going mono monitor.
Mono monitor. I'm happy. My neck is much happier. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't miss it. I do like when I work at home on my MacBook. I don't like it as much. The small screen, I still can't. Like, I feel like I can't see everything. So I much prefer working here, even if it's just one monitor. If it's bigger, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I can see everything. I need that space. But the one monitor is seemingly working fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're better at multitasking than I am, then having more monitors makes more sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can also only really ever interact with one thing at a time, typically. So there is kind of an argument that, like, how much are you really gaining by having more than one monitor?
No, I mean, it's helpful if you're doing something that requires a lot of space.
Sure. Yeah.
For sure. But, like, there was a point where I would work, I'd have Sprout up on one monitor and, like, a test plan or a checklist or like, all of my exploratory test areas on the other side.
Right.
So I didn't have to switch monitors. But I've gone away from that a little bit, so I know what to focus on, and I don't have it as much documented, like the checklists, so I don't have to go back and forth as much.
Yeah.
And if I do, I could just make I don't have Sprout open on maximized on my, because that's kind of annoying. I have DevTools open next to it.
Yeah, normally, I mean, you don't.
So,
I mean, as long as you're within, like, the minimum size that we support, then, like, you don't really need it larger than that. It's not like, as of right now, it's not like having it larger provides more information or better information. It's just spreads everything out further away from each other.
It looks worse until we can flex the boxes.
Another thought that I had: creativity in test. I've tried to bring it up. I think I've brought it up in every conversation I've had so far. Typically, I mean, I would ask, do you do something outside of work or in work that you would that's like a creative outlet that you use to kind of refresh yourself or kind of put you back into like recharge your battery?
Unrelated to work or related?
Or related. Both, either.
I think we talked about this for a bit, and it was maybe I don't remember what got us talking about it. But we were talking about my singing.
The exact same
it probably
question.
was the same thing. Yeah, my I guess I could say my hanging out with my kids, but that drains me even more. So,
well,
my big recharge thing is my singing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing the one thing we talked about last time was I do notice when I'm learning something,
mm-hmm.
like learning a role, especially if I'm learning music and it's in a different language, like all of that processing.
Yeah.
It feels good. The singing just feels good because I'm pretty good at it and
right.
I like to do it, and it's it's a fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the learning a role, learning the music, and learning the language and memorizing that stuff, for some reason it that sort of charges up my brain, and I can see myself having better conversations when I'm learning something.
Right.
So something is firing a little bit better when I do that. And if I go too long, and it's similar with reading, if I go a stretch of a few months, I'm not learning a new role,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not reading to replace it, then like having a simple conversation with someone becomes difficult, and like I don't have a big vocabulary anyways, but I lose whatever words I might have.
Right.
So it becomes harder to think about like answers to questions. So it's like, it serves like a couple purposes. It makes me feel good. I can just let go, and it's something that like I do on my own. It's like another thing. Like there's a group of people, like the community in Chicago for opera singers is fairly small. Like there's the people at the Lyric that are just like all over the place. I have no idea. But there's like this sort of community of what we call storefront opera companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all small opera companies that do theater in these like storefront theaters. And they're just like Stage 773, which is up on Belmont. It's like a store. You walk in, it's a really small place. And the I guess the scope of the production is pretty low, budget wise, but the talent that they bring in is pretty high. But the community is pretty tight. Like I know almost everyone, so like that's like another sort of life that I have separate. It's my own thing, and I can go do that thing, and I'm comfortable with those people. And it's an escape. But then like to bring it back here, there's no like skill that I'm learning with that stuff that I can bring back into work. But it for sure 100% when I'm going through the process of learning something, it does help like my cognitive abilities when I'm at work. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more clearly, and I actually tend to get more done. I probably sleep less because rehearsals are all at night, and it's usually till 10 or 10:30. But yeah, even so, I think more clearly when that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you? So outside of the learning process during that, providing you with like a fresher mind,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like there is an element of creativity within QA, or that creativity provides something for QA that might, lead to being a better QA, or being a better person within the QA profession?
Yeah, and I think to me, it's like how you look at problems. I don't want to say problems, but to me, it kind of boils down to problems. You have something that you need to solve, whatever it is. If you're just exploring something and you need to, if it's a feature, you need to do your exploratory testing on that feature. How you attack that takes some creativity, but it has to be, to me, it has to be like focused on what you're looking at, and the creativity comes in the sort of like the real time analysis of what you're looking at.
Right.
So if you were to do, like, I have requirements and I'm going to write a test plan that's like really methodical, and you're going through like a checklist that you've always done, and we talked about checklists before too. But like, if you have your checklist and you go through all your stuff, and here's what I do, and this is my requirements, and we're going to do all these use cases and make sure they're done, that is valuable. But I don't think there's as much creativity in that. There may be, just from my perspective. I see more creativity in looking at like the just-in-time feature that's in front of you. So this is done. I know I have a checklist of things that I have to do at some point, but if I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pretend that I'm this type of user, and I'm going to use the app, or I'm going to use this feature the way it's been described, or like the user is going to interact with it, so I can put myself into the place of that user and use it. Those ideas of how that user is going to use that feature, or a larger set of features, like all of those use cases, how they interact, that takes some creativity. Right? Like putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And then also like the technical pieces. So there's like the user flows and that type of exploratory testing, but there's also like the feature-based and the risk-based testing. So that takes some knowledge of how things interact. But it also takes like asking those questions, I think, is a really important skill, like knowing what kinds of questions to ask. And I think that's something you do like really well. Like you can ask, and that feedback I get back from a lot of people, and that happens in like specify meetings with Inbox, and it also happens like you're looking at a feature, and those are the questions that start with like, what happens if I do this? And it's less like, how do I break this thing? But it's more of, oh, I know that this interacts with this because I've done this before, or I've looked at the code. What happens if I do this while I have this setting turned on, or this other setting turned on, or I don't have permissions for this? That takes like knowledge of the system and knowledge of what you're looking at, and like putting those two things together and coming up with those questions. And that's less methodical and more sort of creative, as far as I can see. Yeah, there's also, I mean, I think when you start talking about like automating things, there's depending on what it is you need, like the problem that needs to be solved. You may need to be creative in the solutions. but as long as those solutions are sort of based in solving the problem in front of you. Mm-hmm. I think there is a risk of getting too creative and I don't know if that happens so much it could happen with exploratory testing. If it could, but the risk in that is just sort of like maybe a bit of wasting time, but at the end of the day, you're probably still learning something about the app anyway.
Yeah.
But if you I think I've seen people get too creative in the past with coming up with solutions to problems, and it can happen in automation, where you're like, okay, I have this problem to solve. We have to write this test for whatever it is, and bringing in solutions because they're cool and interesting.
Sure.
That's fun, and that could be you could come up with some really creative ways to solve that problem. That may not necessarily be the most precise solution.
Right.
And I'm sure there's not one precise solution for everything. I don't think that's the case as far as the testing is concerned. But I guess there is a bit of risk of being, too creative. Maybe that's not the word. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the something I kind of notice, and not specifically for this conversation, but there's definitely some of those words that the word creative, and I can't think of other examples, but there have been words that I hear used a lot that the more I hear them used, the less I understand what it originally means.
Oh yeah,
So it's like I like asking the question about creativity, but I don't know if I have an exact definition of what creative is or creativity is.
That's a good point, actually.
Outside of something that is unique that you may not have thought of, that could be creative. Or a combination of things that I guess the more I think about it, creativity is just an idea that you haven't thought of that is typically looked at positively. So it's somebody painting a picture of a scenery that's an exact replica of what you're seeing.
Yes.
That's not creative. It's just a copy of it. But if you've never seen that place before and somebody were to show you it, it'd be oh, that's really creative. How'd you come up with all of that construction and all of that? You're not. I'm not sure where I exactly want to go with that.
And it's really interesting.
But the more I ask about creativity, the less I know exactly what I mean by it.
The creative part, that was interesting what you said, because they're if you paint a scenery that's exactly the scenery, that's not as creative as doing an abstract thing that you pull out that's sort of based on that. Yeah. But at what point does that become a subjective thing? So to you, Picasso is more creative than a scene painter.
Sure.
From whenever. But is that actually is creativity like at all objective?
Yeah.
Can you even?
I don't know if it could be objective.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, well, and that kind of goes to some of the other things I've been thinking about of like the idea of something or the meaning of, or the literal meaning of something can be objective, but how you then internalize that idea is then subjective, because then you take in your own meanings on it.
I have a definition.
All right.
You want to hear the definition?
I do.
Creativity?
Yeah.
The use of imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's imagination, using imagination or original ideas.
Yeah. So, like, that definition would then, I feel, be objective.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if the thing was created through a person's own ideas, using whatever we're defining as imagination, then objectively, that is creative. But subjectively, you may not. You may have also
like
thought of something similar to that and be like,
right.
oh, well, I thought of the same thing. But like, if you didn't have any sort of interaction with that person, it's still objectively creative, but you just may not think it's creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's those kind of things, like the more you use it, the less you understand what exactly it means.
But does it have to be especially artistic?
Well, I mean,
can you?
What is artistic?
Fair, yeah.
I mean,
that is completely subjective.
For me, a lot of things that I do, I feel have some form of artistic intent by like putting my own spin on something or putting myself into the thing that I'm doing becomes art. It may not be good art, or it may not be art to what other people think art is, but to me, I feel like most things I do have some sort of artistic quality to it. That I feel like only I need to
and I think that's true. Yes.
I kind of want to go back to your singing profession.
Yeah.
When you're singing, are you singing? So the idea of how like a lot of people get into those sort of like singing or music, dance, whatever, like those types of things.
Yeah.
Performance art. Some people get into it because they like making people feel a certain way. Other people get into it because it may have some, greater meaning to themselves. I'm sure there's people that do it because they just like doing it. I'm curious when you either sing or that process of leading up to learning, getting up to the point where you then do the performance.
Yeah.
What is driving you to that point of the performance?
To me, there's like a thing that I try to get. I just like strive for, and there's like this incredible feeling when you feel like you do something well. Like can be specific to like singing. Sure. If I'm doing something and I have whatever passage it is, if it's an aria, if it's something I'm doing myself, like a solo, or if it's like part of an ensemble thing, there's these I'm getting like chills thinking about it. There's these moments that happen when like everything works. Like I feel like the way I'm producing sound and emotions and like and part of doing a lot of the opera stuff is the role in the character. So making the right choices and singing well. There's these moments, and if it's like a group of people singing together and they're like all on the same path and they all hit these moments at the same time with the musicians,
Right.
There's moments that are just so great. And finding those things is why I do it. And it's not even, and typically my favorite part of any process is like right before we put the show up for like go to production. Because that's when like everyone knows everything, like ready to go, and there's not that other variable, like the audience is another variable, so you have, and that's not put into play until the very end. So you have everything working and running, and you finally get to the point where everything's memorized, you know exactly what you're going to do, and you know all the choices you're going to make, and everyone's just locked in. And before you introduce that other variable, there's these moments that are just brilliant. And that's what that's why I do it. It's for those.
I don't think I've ever done. I don't think I've ever done anything like that.
And it's like, and it's like that feeling is, it's almost like it's like drugs, and it's the only way I can, I could think that like possibly people go into that as a career, because I mean there's no way to make a living doing it. I mean people teach on the side and people wait tables. It's just like you just can't. So, and to make that choice, it's for something like real special, I think.
When did you feel that first feeling? Was it in like school, you had some sort of production, or was it you actively sought out this thing?
No, I was just pulled into it. And it happened in college after a couple of years. Because I did math for my first 2 years. I was a math major. And I was doing music. I was doing stuff on the side. And we had this fusion jazz group that I was singing with. And it was great. And those moments, and I had done a couple of recitals with stuff, and so all of that together, and I did some musicals and straight plays and all of the things, and they just kept wanting to do more, because those moments kept happening with all of those different groups. I'm just gonna do this, and then I dropped, and that's why I say it, I had my whole everything planned out. I was gonna finish, and I knew I was gonna go to 2 schools when I was done with my undergrad. After undergrad, I was gonna hopefully go to Union or RPI, which are upstate New York engineering schools, and continue on with engineering. I had everything planned out. I knew what I was gonna do, and then I dropped all of it to do music. And that conversation I had with my parents was just, they basically thought I fell on my head. And so yeah, but in the end, I still like my head works really well with analytical problems. Which is why I started doing this, and that kind of took over.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that's why. That was a really long roundabout way to get to that point.
It's not a problem. It's all natural conversation.
Yeah. So what do you, do we have time to, I want to ask you the same thing.
Okay.
Like
For what?
like what do you do, you don't sing opera?
Nope.
No, see, but like what, like creative stuff, is there something similar that you do outside to like recharge, and does that, do you bring stuff from anything else into here? Or maybe it's just like a completely different thing. It's not recharging. Maybe it's like you're honing skills at something else that you end up using here.
I don't know.
You don't have to. I just didn't want to suck up all the conversation.
I mean, it's typically how they go. I don't know. I have lots of ideas.
Yeah.
That's where
yes, you do.
That's where most of my effort goes to.
Uh-huh.
The idea process.
Yes.
Which is definitely why a lot of times I think of the fact that I need somebody else that has the same feelings that I have of like coming up with ideas or thinking about things,
Mm-hmm.
but with the actual execution of things.
Uh-huh.
So like, if I could find that pair of like, I'll do the idea stuff and you'll just like knock everything out.
Yeah.
Like that would be great. I don't think that'll ever happen.
You don't want to do the knocking out of the things?
Well, and that's definitely something that I've become more and more aware of, is I need to be my own knockout thing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much why I'm starting to tell myself that, you know, if there's something that I want,
Mm-hmm.
if there's something I would like to see, I need to be the one to make that.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make it, then I'm not going to see it.
Yes. Or at least you might not see it the way you envision it.
Yeah, it's less likely that the thing that I want to see is going to exist, and if it does, it might not be what I wanted. So, and that's kind of where this whole thing came from.
Mm-hmm.
Was 3-4 plus years ago, I was like, I want to do a YouTube channel or something where I'm either testing products and just like going through the process and have it there.
Okay.
And having conversations with other people in the role, because I was I guess it was 2016. I was like out of work for like 3 months, and so during that process I was kind of doing some professional soul searching, or not soul searching professionally, but
I got you.
yeah.
That's a new career option.
Well,
professional soul searcher.
I'm sure it exists. So I was kind of like searching around, and that's where I stumbled upon videos of like people talking about like their process or the process that they go through, and like that kind of restarted those feelings in me of like enjoying what I do, but not really knowing why I enjoyed what I do. And so it kind of gave me more of a vocabulary to understand what I wanted or what I liked about the processes that I have in QA. But outside of that, on and off, I would feel these, like, I don't know, essentially urges that I felt like I needed to, like, do something or, like, make something. Like, I mean, and when I was younger, I would write, like one-page stories. I would,
that's cool.
I would draw. I
Yeah.
would, like, do everything. Well, maybe not everything, but I did a lot of artistic-y, creative things, and then I would play video games, and, like, that was another avenue of, like, me being able to, like, engage with something. I mean, it was probably used for other things, but like, distracting myself. But, like, there's times where I just feel like I have to, like, do something, or, like, make something, or, like I mean, it's been a while, but, like, I would, you know, for X amount of time, I would, like, every day want to, like, draw something, or I would get these ideas to, like, make a story or do this or do that, or, like, I wanted to, I mean, I've thought about wanting to, like, write a script for a movie,
nice.
or make music, or, like, do, like, I don't limit myself to my ideas, so they kind of just go all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is then also a problem, because then I have no focus with them, and so then they just spin on ideas and don't grab onto anything.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm now trying to focus myself into, if I see it, or if I don't see it, I need to make it. I need to make it real. Yeah. And so I have tools to be able to do it. I make lots of excuses for myself to not do things because I don't feel like they're going to be exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Because I don't have, like, the particular skill to do it. Like, I want to make a video game. I don't have all of the skills to be able to make a video game. So then I kind of just sit with that idea for a while without, like, the skills required to do it. And I mean, I could definitely make a video game. That's not hard. But when I think of the idea, it's very specific, and I don't have the skill to do that specific thing.
Oh, yeah, you
so
can't get to that specific place.
Yeah, it's much harder for me to be like, I want to make this thing. Well, first I need to start down here.
Yeah, that's hard, yeah.
And I'm like, but I want this thing, not that thing, to go up to this thing. Which is then where the, like, finding somebody that's able to just, like, do those things is, like, something I definitely thought about for a long time, but now I'm trying to just do it instead. Be my own change.
Mm-hmm. I think that those are the best ways to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's different ways that people learn, but to me, the way that I learn everything the best is learning something because I have to learn something to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how. So rather than saying I want to learn this thing, let me find a problem, like manufacture a problem, so that I have to learn this thing. I typically don't. That doesn't work. That's, like, backwards for me.
Right.
But if there's something out there that I want to do, and I need to learn something to do it, then I'm, like, all in. But I totally get, like, but it's usually something that, like, I already have sort of a grasp of. So starting from the very, very bottom and working up, if it's, like, a few years worth of experience to get to the, like, exact thing that you're trying to solve, that's kind of daunting.
Yeah, that's definitely where I've spent a lot of time, is in that. Not since I mean, there might be a element of like also kind of feeling like I need to go to this specific type of schooling or like take those classes or whatever it might be to be able to then know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I have the idea but have no idea like how to get from nothing to that thing.
Yeah.
Like I can think up those things like all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, normally I'm not actively like, oh, I need to come up with an idea. It's more of like, oh, I have an idea.
Yes.
Which I guess is normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, starting from nothing
mm-hmm.
to making that thing is normally where I am stuck.
Mm.
But yeah, in terms of creativity, like that's the kind of stuff that I like. I like thinking up things.
Yeah.
Like that's where, and that helps professionally because that's what I do.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So it all kind of feeds into each other, which is also partly why I probably don't really get tired of work, is because whether I'm at work or not,
mm-hmm.
I'm doing the same things and I enjoy it.
Yeah, I see you bring a lot of those ideas to work all the time. And it's like specific to feature testing.
Sure.
And then it's even higher level, like one step higher. How do I deal with this type of feature or this type of project?
Mm-hmm.
And then the ideas of how do we do like the larger process stuff. All of that is just churning all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's something that you have like on the list of ideas that so one of the things you said is like
sure.
You have your things on your list and you don't get motivated to making them happen. If there's something that is in that category but it's not this big daunting task, like it'll take you schooling to get to the place where
sure.
you can start. If there's then maybe it's worth talking about those, like pick something that's actually like reachable.
Yeah.
And then like the two of us can go off separate and like, okay, so let's give ourselves a month. Here's the idea. I want to implement this. Mm-hmm. Just a high level idea, and then we can both go off and do it. That'll give motivation to get it done.
Yeah.
And then we can compare and contrast.
Yeah, I mean there is an element of there's certain aspects of like coming up with an idea that will more incentivize me to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Normally it's some sort of monetary thing involved.
Oh, well, sure, yeah.
That definitely helps.
Always.
Yeah. I that's kind of where I like to be, is in the idea area.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I don't have any like specific thing that I'm focused on outside of just I think of things.
That you do.
Well, I guess as like an ending question, would you like to go over your professional path, where you started, where you are?
Oh, from the beginning? It's been a long time.
Well, that's okay.
I have a lot of gray in my beard. I ended up with a math major,
mm-hmm.
or a music major, not math. And I'll go back a little farther and give a real quick sort of history. So I graduated. I did a bunch of like minor tours and summer theater things,
mm-hmm.
and dinner theater for like a couple of years. It was like 2 years. I was in New York for a little while, and then I was in Florida for a while, in Virginia for a while, and North Carolina for a while, and back to New York, and then upstate New York, like all over the place. And then I decided I was going to go back to school, and I had full ride offers for 2 universities to do music, and both of them had like a master's and doctorate program. So I was going to do that, teach at a university, and sing on the side, like as part of that whole thing. And then I decided that, and then I met my wife doing a show, and we decided I decided I wanted to just move to New York and just try it and not go to school. So I just moved to New York, and I started I was auditioning, I was doing stuff, and I was like working on the side. I was answering phones at Merrill Lynch, and studying music as I was there, because they let me do whatever I wanted to. And that was like, that year was like the worst. My brain was like rotting. I couldn't, and I was studying stuff. I started drawing a lot. I was writing scripts and plays and during the day. But it's just, I didn't have anything else to, I think I just missed the math and logic and analytical part of my brain was kind of deteriorating. So I had a friend of mine I went to school with who was a development manager at a company called Stars back then in New York, and they were looking for QA, and this was in 1999. So they wanted to get some testers. And I had a conversation with him. I said, I need to do something with my math brain. I can't answer phones anymore. This is driving me crazy. So, and he had an opening, but he said, I'll mask this as you're applying for this job. But they gave a logic test. It was like a 2-hour test, and it was just straight logic. It was programming agnostic. It wasn't even like a coding test. It was just like straight up logic. He said, come in, take that, and I'll go through the interview process, and then we'll like tell you what you need to go learn in order to do this. But that was like, and I took that test, and it was like fun again. And I aced the test. I got 100 on the test. And it was just entry-level QA, and so they hired me. And at that point, it was interesting because QA at that company was basically like an entry-level junior developer job. So you come in, and the path in that place was, you come, you learn the product, and as you're learning the product, you'll be clicking around, and you'll find bugs, and you'll post bugs, and there was like no methodology to testing. Right. It was just learn the thing. If you find a problem, let the developers know. And then as you're learning the thing, I'll learn VB, and we'll learn how to do the custom programming, and then you could build plugins for the main product. And then once you're good at that, then you can either stick with that and start working with customers on custom plugins, right, or if you don't want to have any client-facing things, you can work on the core. But at that time, that's when Runner started to be used a little bit more, and then QA turned into sort of a thing. We had an actual team of 5 people. And we started putting processes around things, and we started considering testing a thing and not just a click around and here's the user manual, read this and do what it says. And then we brought in WinRunner to do automation, and LoadRunner to do load testing, and I ended up doing most of what I was doing was load testing. Building scripts and working with developers to do performance tweaks and working like with the not so much with a web server, but I was doing a lot of stuff with the SQL and like making tweaks to that to make things faster. So a lot of I was having a lot of fun writing like Windrunner scripts and doing a lot of load runner stuff. So that kind of sated that for me. And then, long story short, I stuck with that job for 11 years. I eventually moved to Chicago through that job. They transferred me here, which is a longer story for another day after I've had beers and I'm ready to talk about it. But yeah, so I ended up managing that team and it turned into a huge team, and then we went offshore, and then things got messy. Another conversation. But that's just a corporate thing. And then I moved on to, and then it just got too corporate and processy. And then I moved to a startup, which was a mobile apps team that hooked up into SAP. And the task for that was to basically, they had a QA team, but they, in retrospect now, I know why I was hired. But they were sort of in process of trying to sell to SAP, and in order to do that, we had to clean a bunch of things up. We sort of had to like audit proof our processes, and we had like some huge features that had to be released. So when I got there, we had a row of binders of test cases, like 100-step test cases on paper in binders with signatures. And that was the process. We would build out tests on paper, and you'd have to go through each one and do a check or an X and sign off on them. So we moved all of that I put Jira on. We had a local instance of that. We got that running, and we moved everything into that, and the whole dev process moved into that. So that whole thing got transformed to something that SAP could acknowledge as something they wanted to take on. And we had to go through like 2 rounds of audits with them to make sure everything was kosher before they bought us. And then I spent another, I was there for 6 years total. And then once we got up into SAP, it's just the process there is on this process on top of process. And so, and we talked about something I think a little while ago. Like once I got to SAP, that was like, ooh, I can grow. And then I started only focusing on like talking to the right people and growing and getting my name up there. And I sort of went way too high, way too fast, and it felt really good, making all sorts of money and with that kind of thing. But like all of the stuff that was fun, that was interesting, and that actually made me marketable was just like rotting. So so all I was doing, it was just all process, and I was building spreadsheets and PowerPoints and talking to contractors. We had people in India that we contracted out that I was talking to all the time, and we're putting the plans together for potentially bringing people in to automate. So I was talking to 3 or 4 contracting companies here to get a plan together to do that. So it was all that kind of stuff. Which just got old pretty quickly. So so then I took off from there, and I was kind of backing myself into a corner. Also, I could tell, and they move people around all the time. I got asked to move to Palo Alto at one point, and I said no. If I say no, I'm kind of leaving myself hanging. So yeah, so after that I left, came here, and now I'm hanging out with you, doing this thing. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having the conversation.
Of course, it was
we'll
fun.
have to do another one.
Yeah, we can do
some other